All right, how's it going? Happy Saturday. Thank you for attending this session on collaboration, building collaboration and resilience in the workplace. My name is Kyle Ackey. I'm the program coordinator here in the Office of Workforce Integration and Career Advancement. And welcome to the third installment of our Cultural Enrichment and Professional Development Training Series. I am thrilled to experience this workshop with you all today. One of my favorite people in the world will be presenting. And Dr. Mara Woody has been in higher education, has been a higher education innovator for nearly 20 years. She is currently the senior manager, strategic partnerships at Ripen, an experiential learning platform whose mission is to eliminate underemployment. In this role, Mara builds consortium programs that support post-secondary institutions in transforming to experiential learning campus cultures connected to the larger workforce development ecosystems. Before that, she served as a senior partnership director for the Global Wanawani Foundation. Previously, she served as assistant commissioner for post-secondary policy with the Missouri Department of Higher Education and Workforce Development, where she led initiatives through partnerships and collaboration to connect higher education and workforce development to serve adult learners in the state and change the culture to focus on educational innovation, strategic projects, and change management. While in this role, Mara founded the Missouri Adult Learners Network, bringing together higher education institutions, workforce development, and community organizations to focus efforts on serving adult learners more successfully, and hosted the first student journey mapping workshop in the state for higher education institutions. Dr. Woody has an EED in Educational Leadership and Policy from Vanderbilt University, a Master's of Science in Criminal Justice from Columbia College, and a Bachelor's of Arts degree in Criminal Justice. During the summer of 2012, she was a fellow in the Peabody College Institute of Higher Education Management at Vanderbilt. Mara, I'm going to pass it off to you. Welcome and thank you for being here.
Awesome. Thanks, Kyle. So let's go ahead and kind of just get started with the discussion. Okay, so before we start, a couple of things I want to make sure that we do here is, first off, I want everyone to have something to write with, because this is going to be an interactive session where we're going to have chances for everyone to hear from each other, and you're going to learn some things you want to write down. Also, make sure that we listen to each other and respect each other's stories. That's really important. I'm invoking the Vegas Clause. Officially, Vegas Clause is invoked now. So we can make this a space where we can talk, we can be real, we can be open with each other, and that's going to be okay. What we're going to do when we have discussions is we're going to turn off the recording. So that way we can really all discuss and have great discussions. And then when we're done with the discussions and we move back to the presentation, then we'll turn the recording back on. So everyone know your stories are safe with this little group that we have here today. Also, mostly what I'm going to do today is tell stories. This PowerPoint I've created to give references to you. Kyle will send this out to attendees afterwards, so that way you can go in and you can click links, you can research further information. This is kind of here to guide our conversation, but really this is our opportunity for the next hour and a half to share our stories and to learn from each other. And so I love when people ask questions. I love interactive sessions. And so if you have any questions throughout, please feel free to chime in at any point and ask any questions that you have. Also, I have sprinkled this with what we call in my house Mara-isms. These are things that I say all the time to everyone in my house, and you could even ask anyone in my family, hey, what's a Mara-ism? And each person can spit out the Mara-ism I say to most. A Mara-ism is my universal truth. And so you'll see some of these more as we go through the presentation, but these are the things that I find are always true. And so I always repeat them, especially to my children, sometimes my husband, as lessons to never forget throughout life. And I really love sharing those for some strange reason. I'm not sure if anyone else likes hearing them, but you guys can let me know for sure if these are good or bad, and I should stop doing this to everyone around me. So then really what we're talking about today, why is Kyle doing this? Why is UMSL care about doing this? What we're talking about, and I'll skip to that slide, is really allowing individuals to be able to find their potential to bring their best selves every day. And then when you're able to bring your best self every day, then those around you see that models that behavior, and they can bring their best selves. And so really being able to participate in these sessions really allows you to focus on what you can change. And that is how you perceive things, how you do things, how you feel about things. And then others see that, and you're modeling that behavior for others. Most of the time when I think about who I'm modeling my behavior for, it's for my kids. What kind of adult do I want my children to become? And how do I model that for them today? And so it's really important also, as we talk about resilience and collaboration in the workplace, part of that is, how do you build that team where the team collectively is resilient, where the team collectively works together. And so as one person in the organization, you are an influencer and you can help shape that by your own behavior. And so that's why I love that UMSL is doing this, and I love that Kyle is having these sessions, is because it really allows individuals to take that leadership role at an organization and really be the one to say, I'm going to change the culture here. So my story. I'm pretty sure Kyle chose me for this presentation, Resilience and Collaboration, because I almost exactly 6 months ago to this day lost my job this year. It was actually St. Patrick's Day. So I did not enjoy St. Patrick's Day very much this year. And that was, for anyone who's gone through a job loss, that is the scariest moment, one of the scariest moments of your lives. I have a family that I'm trying to support. I've got children in my home that I need to take care of. And to lose a job, like, I identify as a provider. This is what I do. I take care of my family. And to lose that job, I felt all kinds of shame, all kinds of grief. I was humiliated. I was embarrassed. I'd reach out to friends who would give me well-meaning advice, but it didn't help at all. And they'd be like, no, don't worry. This won't look bad on your resume. I'm like, the fact that you're saying that, I know this will. And so I was really in this space of, what am I going to do to provide for my family? I'm scared. I am scared. And another well-meaning friend gave me the advice, Mara, if you need to eat a half gallon of ice cream tonight to feel better, do it. But stop at one. And that was probably the worst advice a friend gave me, because 2 weeks later, I was still eating every half gallon of ice cream I could find. There's no grocery store in my town that was safe from me buying ice cream and pulling it all off the shelves. And so in that, about 2 weeks later, after eating every half gallon of ice cream I could find, I really was like, okay, this isn't working. I've really got to, like, actually focus here. And I remember years ago, a friend had told me, for every 90 jobs you apply for, you'll get one interview. I was like, that's not real. No, it couldn't possibly be that many. Like, not me. I won't have to. So I'm sitting here doing the job applications, and the fifth job application, you're like, yeah, I've got some hope. I'm feeling good. Those are the good days. You're like, yeah, I know I'm going to get this job. I know I'm going to get this interview. By job application 20, not a single interview. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm revising my resume, rewriting my cover letter, like really looking at, what am I doing wrong? How do I fix what I'm doing? By job application 50, I'm beginning to think I'm the problem. What's wrong with me? Why am I not getting any interviews? And by job application 90, I'm like, oh my goodness, my friend was right. It really does take a long time. And to be resilient, you keep doing it. I could have given up at any point and said, okay, this isn't working. I feel terrible about myself as a human being now. But what keeps replaying in my mind is, I'm setting the example for my children. And do I want my kids to see a mom who gets up every single time and redoes it and fights for it and goes after it? Or do I want my kids to learn that it's okay to give up at some point because it got too hard? And so that's really what kept fueling me through this process. And I've been through enough cycles of good and bad in my life where I fully believe everything happens as it should. In that moment, I might be really unhappy about what's happening to me, or I might be in crisis mode. But years later, I can look back and realize that moment had to happen for a reason. And so it is part of my story. Also, through some of these good and bad times in my life, there was one moment in my life where I really started listening to other people's stories, what's happening to them, what they've overcome. And I remember one time I was listening to the story of a Holocaust survivor who survived the Holocaust and then later on moved to the United States and was telling a friend, human beings are inherently good. And this was someone who survived the Holocaust, who believes human beings are still good people. And I was like, you know what? If he can look at human beings that way, I can too. And so bad things happen to good people so they can become inspiring people. because those are the stories that inspire us. And so as I think about what I want my children to live out in their lives, I want them to live out what's inspired them. And to do that, that means I have to be resilient. That means I have to be stronger and tougher than whatever I'm facing. And so that's really what kept me fueled and motivated through this job search. That was my resiliency. And everyone has different things that drive and motivate them. And so being resilient means finding that thing that's going to help you to get up every time you get knocked down. And then on the second piece of that, the collaboration piece of this presentation, all of those applications I filled out, I think I stopped at around 90. All those applications filled out. The job I ended up getting was because I knew somebody. It was somebody that I had met at a conference the previous year who had actually reached out to me and said, hey, I'm creating a position, and might this position be interesting to you? And so that collaboration piece and building my network, which we're going to talk about a lot today because it's really critically important, that's what actually helped me land the job. And so tying all that together, the resilience and the collaboration and the emotional roller coaster that I went through for that period, but it took about 3 months for me from the point I lost the job to start my next job where I am now. That was a 3-month process, and that was a really long roller coaster. And so just wanting to share that so that way people know you're not alone if you're going through that. Whatever happens in life, we're all hitting it at some point. And so knowing that you can reach out to others and knowing that there are supports out there is a really critical piece to getting through those dark times. So then we're going to talk a little bit about resilience. And really, there's a description here. I like to think of like, these aren't Marisms. These are things I've stolen from other people. But when the going gets tough, the tough get going. You know, when it's difficult, get strong. All these types of things. These are what I think of when I think of resilience. And I don't know how many people here have watched the movie Stuart Little. And this is Stuart Little, where Michael J. Fox was the voice of the mouse and Gina Davis was the mom. And there was a scene towards the end of the movie where the mouse, Stuart Little, had to climb this big old wall to get to save his friend. And he had his cat friend, Snowball, with him. And Snowball's like, I wouldn't climb that wall. Are you crazy? And Stuart's like, I have to save my friend. And so he starts climbing the wall, and the cat yells up to him, you have moxie. And I'm like, what is that? Moxie sounds so cool. I want to be Moxie, whatever that means. So I actually literally, and I was watching this movie because my kids, not for me. But I actually went and Googled what is Moxie. And that's where I found out Moxie is like courage, tenacity, and going after something you believe in. And I'm like, I want to be Moxie. And so when I think of words associated with resilience that are cool words, like I want to be scrappy, I want to be gritty. That's what I think about is what are those really cool things that remind me of characteristics I want? And then how do I live out those characteristics in my life every day? So hopefully now every time you hear Moxie, you'll think of Stuart Little. Because I still do. That movie's been 20 years, and I still think about Stuart Little every time I think about being Moxie and resilient. So then if you guys are not familiar with Brene Brown or Simon Sinek, I highly recommend that you plug into them. There's a ton of stuff on them about them on Google, but I have here 3 videos. They're my favorite videos from all 3 of them. There's 50 gazillion incredible videos that they do. But these are both really leadership folks out there today. I would probably call them leader influencers. They've got a really wide mass media presence. Each one of these videos is about 20 minutes long, which is why we're not watching any of them today. So give yourself about 20 minutes to be able to listen to them. But one of the videos I really, really like is by Brene Brown and The Power of Vulnerability, Listening to Shame. What she says in one of these videos is so compelling to me. And I think it's something that resonates with everybody, is when we talk about sharing our own stories, you know, our own hardships, that's being vulnerable. That's scary. No way am I going to do that. I am not going to do that. But then when we think about the people who do that, they get up on a big stage and they tell some story, some impactful story. What's the first thing we think about those people? Wow, they're so brave. That is so cool. They're willing to tell us that story. And so that is, to me, like the epitome of how we treat ourselves. You know, we view other things that people do as brave, but if we do it, it makes us weak. And we are so hard on ourselves that it's our mental state that we have to get past whenever we're trying to be more resilient or we're trying to get through that tough day. a lot of times it's us and we're doing it to ourselves. And so really overcoming that fear that we have for ourselves. So on that note, this is going to be our first breakout. And so Kyle, will you stop the recording? Okay. So then, and again, this PowerPoint is just going to be a reference for the most part later. And so I have just a ton of information in here, a ton that you can look up and Google later. But this is just a long list of different strategies. Some of my favorite strategies are I do gratitude journaling, and it really is just a couple of lines a day about what are three things that I'm grateful for every day. Even on my darkest days in the middle of job search where I felt terrible about myself because not a single person was calling me for an interview, I still had to come up with 3 things I was grateful for every day, which was very hard some days. But that kind of helped keep me on this mindset that life is still good, there's still good out there, and there's still positive things to be achieved and accomplished. And so everyone has those personal things that they do to help them get through the day. And the list is endless and exhaustive, but everyone should have something that they do to kind of help them cope and get through personal difficulties. That does not involve eating half gallons of ice cream multiple times a day. That was not a positive thing to do. And so then diving into self-care. I don't know if anyone on this presentation has ever watched What Not to Wear, but it used to be a show out years ago, and here are the hosts, Clinton and Stacy. I used to love to watch What Not to Wear, and it was a show about people who weren't fashionable at one time in their life, and so someone had called an intervention, and Stacy and Clinton would come, and they would kind of tease them a little bit about how unfashionable they were, but then through the series of the show, that episode, they would work with that person to become more fashionable. Well, that show wasn't actually about fashion at all. That's what everyone saw. But what it really was about was individuals who weren't taking care of themselves. They were taking care of everyone around them. They were providing for everyone around them. They were everyone else's go-to, but their cups had been depleted and they weren't taking care of themselves. And so what I just kept hearing from the show every time I watched it was the importance of taking care of yourself first, because you can't take care of anyone else unless you're taking care of you. And so it really is when they tell you on the plane, put on your oxygen mask first, because you can't put on somebody else's if you're passed out. That is very much what this show was about, was how do you fill your cup regularly so then you can support the others around you to fill their cups. And so that's really what the theme of this whole hour and a half with us together is how do you take care of yourself first? Because people around you, if you can't take care of you, you aren't really taking care of them. And it's really hard for us to do that. It's really hard for us to say, I deserve time for me. With so many people depending on me, I deserve time to take care of myself. And it's really hard to make ourselves believe that we deserve it. Again, that negative self-talk we have about our own narrative, how we're not good enough and other people deserve it, but I don't. That's one of our biggest hindrances to really being able to unlock our true potential. So I hope this works. The volume isn't terribly great, but I really want us to be able to talk about what are your me time activities? Like, what are the things you do for you that are just for you? And I remember when I was much younger, I had a teacher one time who's talking about how important it was for everyone to have me time. And at that time, I was a single parent. And if you're a parent, you know you don't get me time from your children. And I remember arguing with this teacher saying, no, for me to take me time is selfish. I don't deserve me time. I have to take care of my children. This is a big role to do. And for me to not focus on my children, then that makes me a bad mom. And this teacher kept coming back and saying, you have got to focus on you because you can't take care of your kids unless you're in a good space to do that. And over many years, I have finally figured that out. But it took me a long time to figure that out. And one of my first instances of finding my me time is I love running, and I had young children at home. So I couldn't just leave them at home and go out on a run anytime I wanted. But I had been able to find a jogging stroller that wasn't too terribly expensive. It was within my budget at the time. And I could plop my youngest kid in a jogging stroller, put in my little, back then they were wired earbuds, put in my earbuds and go for a run. And so even though my kid was with me, I still found a way to get me time, which was my special time. I went on a run for me, not for her. And so that was how I started figuring out, how do I get time for myself and time to replenish my cup? And so there's lots of different ways you can do it. It's what you love to do, what makes you feel great, what makes you feel good. And that's why I'm interested in hearing what other folks do for their me time. And so we didn't get to hear from Clara. Oh, let's stop. Nice. Awesome. Okay, those are cool. My me time right now that I love the most is working out. I do it 5 days a week, religiously, no matter what. I don't care how bad I feel. I don't care if I'm sick. Well, I don't have COVID and go to the gym. But if I have stuffy nose, allergies, I'm achy, so I don't care what the excuse is, I'm still going to go because I always feel better afterward. And so sometimes you have to come at your me time with the commitment to do it no matter what, because it's really easy for us to make excuses to not spend time for ourselves. So next thing, this is one of the Marisms that my family hears all the time. It's not what you know, but who you know. And I really remember in college, again, I had a professor that would tell us, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And I argued back with him. I said, no, it's not. You pull up, you buy your bootstraps, you work hard, you earn it, you get there by your own effort. And he's like, no, that's not how the world really works. And at that time, I really believe that's how the world works. You have to prove yourself. And when you prove yourself, then you're going to get where you need to go. Since then, I have reflected on all the people in my life who have helped change the trajectory of my life by being my supporter, by being my advocate, by really caring about what happens to me. And so that's when I realized that no, it's not a one-man effort. This really is, we get where we are in life because of the people who care about us and the people who want to see our success. And so I was actually, it was in my final degree in school, my doctorate degree. So I was in my late 30s, the first time I heard of the words social capital. I had no idea what that was until that moment. And what it basically was, and what I understand it to be, is those people you are connected with that are basically your supporters and advocates. Those people that will help connect you with other individuals or might help connect you with opportunities. In the current position I'm in right now, I got that position because I had a relationship with someone who was going to create a new position at their company and wanted to hire me on. And so it's those relationships you build with people that are really built on trust, on really seeking out each other to help us all become a better person tomorrow than we are today, which I really feel is important, and really building your relationships and your sense of community with people around you. So I was late in my age whenever I found out what social network or social capital is. So I jumped on it like a bull in a china shop, like I'm going to go out and network with everyone I can think of. So when Kyle mentioned I built a network here in Missouri, that's because this is a thing I'm really passionate about doing now. And I've got a lot of years to make up for when I didn't know that social capital was a thing. And so really, how do you build it? Like people talk about social capital, but then what do you do? How do you build it? And really what I do is I take every opportunity I can to just talk to random people. Like I'm in the grocery store and I'll just strike up conversations with people because I love to hear people's stories. I love to hear the direction that they want to take their lives. I love just being able to soak in and learn from others. And so just start conversations with people. I also, and I have this at the end of the presentation, I'm also pretty out on LinkedIn. And so I love connecting with folks on LinkedIn. If you don't use LinkedIn a lot, it is amazing how much you can reach out to people on LinkedIn. Like I'll even read a story written in some journal and I really like what they say. And I think they're profound, the author. I'll go into LinkedIn and I'll just cold contact and say, hey, I really liked your story. I'd love to meet and discuss and learn from you. And you'd be amazed at how many people write back and how many meetings you can set up just to hear from people and learn from them and really get to know them better. And so I'm pretty well known for doing that. I also really like to connect other people. So as I meet these new people, I'm like, oh, you got to meet this person who really cares about the same thing you do. I had someone call me just recently a great connector. The great connector, maybe. And so that's something else I like to do is also connect other people. And so it's really, a lot of it is building that professional network, building those individuals that you interact with, those people that you want to learn from, those people that inspire you, really just building up and getting to know as many folks as you can who can become your advocate and your ambassador in life, so to speak. when I think about who had social capital for me, even when I thought it was a one-man show, anyone who was a job reference for me was somebody that I had built social capital with. Anyone who knew me that the potential job could then reach out to and say, hey, do you know Mara? What are her skills like, or what is she like? That was somebody who I had built social capital with. So even when I declared I am a one-man island and I'm going to make my own success on my own, I wasn't. And there were people who were advocating for me and supporting me along the way. And so that is something that I've had to learn over time. But what's one of the really important things to building that social capital is, and I want to skip this one and go down for a second. One of those things to being able to build that social capital is how you interact with others and being a collaborator and really being able to tie together, you know, when people are working on similar things and really getting them in the conversation together and getting people working together. And if you look here, if you Google the definition of collaboration, 2 or more individuals working together to achieve a common goal. Okay, that doesn't mean they're actually like working together productively. That doesn't mean they achieve the goal or working together to achieve a goal. But that definition doesn't really tell me a lot. And so whenever I started thinking about, okay, how do you actually collaborate? For me, it helps me to think about the skills and the focus. And so the skills are really that you're listening. You're listening to folks to understand, not to counter argue. You are really in tune to other folks and where they're coming from, what motivates them. How do you get people to be able to get together around a common goal? Like, we all want to achieve X thing. We all think there are 20 different ways to get there, but we all really believe in this X thing. So how do we work together to see this thing happen? Because we all really want that to happen. And so it's how do you connect folks? And then the focus. If you're really going to be a great collaborator, you can't focus on yourself. You need to focus on a team. You need to focus on what are we going to achieve together? And really, whenever you're collaborating, it's not my solution's right, your solution's wrong. That doesn't matter. What matters is what is the best solution that we can find. It might not be my favorite solution, but I know it's the one that we can achieve together in order to have impact. And so everyone has valuable insight at the table whenever you're a collaborator. And so that's really another one of those keys to helping build that social capital, is really being invested in serving the greater good and not just ourselves. And so again, here's just another list that you guys can reference later. I don't want to read everything off, but how do you build collaboration and resilience in the workplace? And probably the most persuasive person I knew that was really able to do that really well was a guy that I'd worked with at a college campus. And I can't remember what people called him, but I think they called him like the hallway counselor, something like that. But if he walked across you in the hallway, he'd never just walk past you in the hallway. Hey, so-and-so, how you doing? How's life? How's things going with your mom? I know your mom's sick. Really talking to people, listening to people, understanding people. Well, all of us loved him to death, and all of us wanted his thing to happen on campus. Like, all of us were his supporters. And so we're all like, how do we make your thing happen? Just because he so clearly cared about the individuals that he worked around. He really wanted us to be in a great space when we came to work. Because of that, we all would have moved mountains for his thing to happen. He actually was working on a college campus in retention. How do we keep students successful in college? And that was what his department was. And so he had designated retention ambassadors across the campus, where it might have nothing to do with my job or with what I'm trying to achieve every day. But if this is going to help him, then I'm in. So what do I need to do to support him? That is probably one of the best collaborators I've ever seen. And he did that by really caring about others. And so let's talk about what are some examples of good collaboration that each of us have seen. I love how that just keeps coming off and on. It's kind of scary. Okay, so one of the most important things, there are 5 things that I really want people to be able to get out of this presentation. And I have them highlighted at the end of a slide here, but this is one of them, and it's what I call the trust equation. This you can Google. There are different variations of it. But this is something that I have found to be true over and over and over and over. So my first experience with this was when I started in a new position where I worked with a lot of faculty, and they would all shoot me these emails. Like, I would get 100 emails an hour from faculty who would just different questions about things. And it was always, I don't know why, but it was always really important to me. I felt it was always really important to be responsive to folks. Reply quickly, even if it's, I'm working on this and I'll let you know. Or if I can get the answer quickly, reply back and let them know. And I can't tell you how many times a faculty person would come back and say, thank you for replying so quickly. And I was just like, that's really meaningful to folks. Like, they really care that I'm replying quickly and they're not lost in, the email netherworld. And so that was when I first started experiencing this thing called trust, and when people trust you. And it wasn't until a couple of years later I did a leadership development program where they really talked about what's called the trust equation. And this trust equation is what you do for other people to find you trustworthy. And so this has nothing to do with you trying to change others, but it's you setting the example of how to be trustworthy. So that way people come to you and trust you, and then hopefully behave trustworthy themselves because they know that you are a trustworthy person. And so basically what it means to be trustworthy is, one, you're credible. You know your stuff. You don't talk about stuff you don't know the answers to. And if you don't know the answer, you say, I'm going to find the expert who knows the answer. And so it's, you know what you're talking about, and you talk about what you know. The second thing is you're reliable. If you say you're going to do it, you do it. I remember one time I told a boss I was going to create a series of training videos. And about halfway through, I'm like, why am I doing this? I hate this. This isn't fun at all. And I'm like, I said I was going to do this. I'm going to finish this. And so being reliable is finishing what you say you'll finish, finishing what you start. And so that is critical. Like, we all know that person who says, oh yeah, I'll do that. And they never do. And none of us trust that person. And none of us count on them whenever they say they're going to do it. And so it's, don't be that person. Always be the person that does what you're going to say you're going to do. The next one is called intimacy, which is a little weird. But what intimacy, it can mean a couple different things. It can mean they're approachable, they're likable, you feel safe with them. I can tell you something and not be worried that you're going to go gossip about me or say negative things about me. I feel like you are a safe relationship for me to have. And so people who are trustworthy are credible, they're reliable, and they're safe. They're psychologically safe. And then the bottom one, that self-orientation, that's like the biggest factor. Basically, are you in it for you? Are you in it for others? We all know that person who's in it for themselves. None of us trust that person. None of us want to work with that person, because we know at the end of the day, if they can stab you in the back to get ahead, they're going to. And so this is basically being that oriented to serving others, that oriented to the team's success, to, if you are in a position to be able to coach or mentor, coaching and mentoring because you really truly care about the direction others' lives are heading in, and you want to see them reach their potential and their goals. And so this is one of the biggest things. If I'm talking to someone who's like, how do I develop me? I always say the trust equation is huge. Become the expert in what you know, do what you say you're going to do, be safe for people, and then don't be oriented for yourself. Be oriented for others and for the team and for success and common goals. Be a servant, as Joel had mentioned earlier. And so if there's like nothing else, this is one of the top things that I want folks to really take away from this is, this helps you with being resilient. This helps you with collaborating. This is a why right here. I want to be one of those individuals that others can trust, because it's important to me that I be a trustworthy person. So we're going to practice what we preach here. I think we've been going for quite a while. Yeah, we've only got 30 minutes left. So we're going to take a little break. But before we take the break, this is one of the things we all should do for self-care. It kind of helps us be able to keep maintaining. Sometimes when we're tired or we're struggling, we really need to take a break. And so some of my favorite breaks, I don't know if you guys use Twitter, but Twitter, there's this one guy whose name is like Butengabita, and he posts puppy and cat videos all the time. And so that's one of my mindless breaks I take sometimes, is I just look at adorable animal videos on Twitter. And so find the thing that you love to do. Up here, these top two pictures, that's my puppy, the one who's barking in the background. So sometimes I can't hear very well. But that's also something that kind of helps me whenever I need a break and I need to detox. Even if it's just a couple minutes, a break always helps. So we're going to go ahead and take a break now because we've been going for about an hour and it's about time for all of us to have a break, bio break, get another cup of coffee, whatever it is. We'll be back in 5 minutes. So at 11:32, we will be back. So let's everyone take a break and we'll be back in just a second. Kyle, if you want to stop recording.
Oh.
Okay. So this Maraism, this one, my son is the one I use this Maraism with the most, own your space. My son is 18 years old and will literally be lots of things, but the best example I can think of is he'll be at the counter making his cup of coffee. And if you come walking near him, by him on the counter, he gets out of the way, sorry. Doesn't mean to be making coffee. I'm like, what are you apologizing for? This is your space. You were here making a cup of coffee. You deserve to finish your cup of coffee for yourself. You don't have to apologize for being in that space. And that's what I alluded to earlier with this next generation being very meek and being very shy. And they need to hear those stories of individuals who have really overcome that, like you, Sarah. So that way they know that they can really be there and own their space and be present in their space. And that's okay, and that's good, and it's important for them to do. So on that note, really part of doing that is building up emotional intelligence. Years ago, this is one of my favorite topics that I really love to develop myself on and learn a lot about. I can't remember where I learned this, but again, I learned it late in life. I'm a late bloomer, I guess. That importance of understanding yourself and understanding those around you. And so being aware of your emotional state and then being able to manage your emotional state and then really being able to gauge others around you. Like my son immediately always assumes he's in the way and he's a bother anywhere he is. And so really stopping to take that time. Why do you feel like that? Is that an appropriate response? Should you feel that way? And then reading others around him to realize, no, they don't consider me a bother. And so we've probably all worked with that person at work who loses their temper or who isn't particularly nice to individuals or who kind of flies off the handle or is just difficult. We all know the difficult person to work with. Well, that is someone who probably hasn't fully developed their awareness of themselves and their behavior and hasn't really been able to read others around them to realize when they are behaving that way and they're alienating others. And so this is another one of Mara's big fives, the emotional intelligence, that I really think it's critical that people learn more about. And so I have some links down here on emotional intelligence. Everything I put in my PowerPoints are free resources online. And you can even Google emotional intelligence and it'll pull up a ton of stuff. But really, I wanted this conversation to kind of be a pivoting point of, ooh, I want to learn about this, or I want to learn more about this. And so it kind of starts you on a journey where you keep researching things further and you keep like jumping down the rabbit holes and you keep building on what you're learning. That's kind of what I have found my learning process is. It's actually pretty scattered. And for someone who's usually considered very organized, and when it comes to learning, I just soak it all in and I'll just jump down a rabbit hole if it sounds interesting and see where it takes me. And so this is huge. This one is really important in being one of those relators at work and being able to collaborate and work with other individuals, to be able to understand where others are coming from and to be able to gauge by body language, like, okay, clearly this is something that you want to talk about more, or I don't think this is resonating with you. Let's flesh this out more. And so emotional intelligence is really an important thing to really be able to develop for everybody. So then mental health. These two words together often make me uncomfortable. I think they do for a lot of people, because usually when we talk about mental health, it's because someone is struggling or there's an issue. Whereas the two words mental health, everyone has minds and everyone has health. And so those words actually aren't a stigma. You can have good mental health, you can be struggling, and you can be in a difficult situation with mental health. And so I think having COVID is really this is what I used to say, rub some dirt on it, you're fine. Not a problem. This is a terrible thing to say to people, by the way. Don't say this, but this was me pre-COVID, rub some dirt on it, you're fine. And now post-COVID, really, this is something we all talk about now. We're struggling, difficult situation. We as an entire world went through a global pandemic together where we were forced to isolate from each other for extended periods of time. That's hard. And we can just pause right there and say, we all went through some hard stuff together. It made it okay for us to start talking about mental health. And so how do collaboration and resilience tie into mental? Ooh, there's a dog. Hi, puppy. How does collaboration resilience tie into mental health? Well, very honestly, if you're not feeling in a good place for yourself, then it's really hard to get up every day and fight the fight every day. It's really hard to be there for everybody else if you're not in a place where your needs are being met. And so that's part of that self-care, is really taking care of yourself and developing yourself so that you can be there for yourself and for others. And right now, like, there are a lot of folks that are struggling right now. And a lot of that is post-COVID, but there were a lot of things pre-COVID too. It's just now we're able to talk about it because COVID has made this more mainstream and more understood. So all of these things play together. And that's why the resounding theme you hear in this presentation is take care of you first, because that's going to contribute to all those behaviors whenever you work with others. So post-COVID, and I had this Maraism pre-COVID, but this really is very strong. Through adversity, we find strength. And we find that strength in a lot of ways. We find that strength through getting with others who are going through the same thing and not feeling alone. We find that strength through putting ourselves out there and doing new things that we didn't think we could do. We find strength by doing it. Every time the going gets tough, we get tougher. I remember when COVID first hit, I'd started hosting these weekly office hour meetings with higher ed institutions. And for the first several months, when everyone was in their most confused states, the least amount of information, the most scared about, could something happen to me or a loved one because of COVID? I got countless emails from folks saying, thank you, Mara, for hosting these weekly meetings. I know I'm not alone. And sometimes that's just what people needed, was knowing there are other people around me. Human beings, we are inherently social creatures. We can't help it. This is how we're hardwired. We need other people. And so I think about when anytime the going gets tough, what is that thing that we can do best? We can build community. And when we build community, we support each other. And so as you think about what you can do going forward, anytime you're in the workplace and things are tough, anytime in your personal life things are tough, you build a team. Basically, you're trustworthy. You model the behavior. You get people together around a common goal. You be that person that can create that culture. And so through that, we find the strength to prevail, and we'll find the strength to prevail when the going gets tough again. And so you're really kind of exercising those muscles for now and for the future throughout your life. This is probably my favorite Maraism. I find this is the one that I use pretty frequently whenever things just get tough, is, you know what, I'm tougher than whatever that thing is. So again, we discussed at the beginning, we're going to discuss again, why does this matter? Well, you have to be able to take care of yourself before you can take care of anyone else. And one of the things that we haven't talked a lot about, but especially in the workplace, is we all know folks who are very technically good at their jobs. Whatever that job is, they've got the technical skills to do the job. But they may not have those soft skills that it takes to work with others, to be able to work on a team, to get along well. We all have those individuals that we know can do the job, but they're just not easy to work with. And so what we can do is really focus on developing our soft skills so that we are the person who knows how to do the job, and we're the person that people like working with too in order to get the job done. Because then you can build better teams. Then you can have better outcomes and solutions whenever you have more diversity in thought. And you can create the environment where everyone can bring their best self to work. That's something that I talk about a lot, is when you have leaders who disagree in the workplace, or you have people who fight at the workplace, does that really allow your colleagues to come to work and be their best selves? Or are you now creating stressors and different things that just distract individuals from being able to bring their best selves to work? You know, I know a lot of people love gossip in the workplace, but if you're one of the folks being gossiped about, can you really come to work and bring your best self when people are talking about you? And so you have to think about that and how you behave in the workplace is what is going to allow people to be able to come and bring their best self, because we all want to work towards this vision. We all want to achieve this thing. So how do I support my team in getting there? And that's what this whole presentation is about, is really how to be able to take care of yourself first, so you can take care of the team you work with second. On that Simon Sinek video that I have at the beginning of the PowerPoint, one of the things he talks about, which is so compelling to me, is if you support others, that in itself can become your therapy. So if you know someone who's going through a hard time and you support them through that, that can really help you feel a lot better about whatever's happening in your life. Having just gone through a job loss this year, I've had a lot of people. Right now, if you work in education, it's a hard industry to work in, especially if you're in educational technology. A lot of layoffs, a lot of companies closing, a lot of people losing jobs. And I've had an unbelievable amount of people reach out to me this year who've been laid off, sometimes twice in less than a year, who are just like, I'm trying to figure out the next thing and I don't know the direction. And I love meeting these individuals and I love hearing their stories. And I actually just had one of these conversations yesterday where this person says, I don't know what I want to do. And they told me their story. And I was like, well, I can hear through your story exactly some incredible things you could be doing right now. And they'd kind of hit a stuck point. And so it just, sometimes it's more helpful to you to really be there as a support to others than maybe even for them. Because to you, it also, I'm not alone. I do know how to climb out of this because, I'm offering strategies to others. So why don't I use those strategies for myself? And really building community and knowing that I have people now I can reach out to on my dark days. And so one of those really important things that I love to do is pay it forward. Way back in the day, I used to do my own little mini what not to wear. I would have friends who'd be like, I can't wear nice clothes. I don't look good in that. And I found one of the most incredible moments was when I'd take a friend shopping and be like, we're going to go shopping. And I'd put them in something where I was like, I know this is going to be awesome. And they put it on and you can see their entire face light up. You can see the way they carry themselves change. You can see the way they look in the mirror at themselves differently. Those are moments I love. I love when somebody really feels at their fullest. And so those are the moments I live for. And that in itself fills my cup. And so think about that also as you can model this behavior, you can support others, you can really be there to see others live the lives they were meant to live. So next is action plan, and we don't have a super amount of time. And so this really, again, is laying out just tools for you to access later. But I'm a woman of action, as I like to say. Like, I like to talk about stuff, I like to wax poetic a little bit, but I also like to get things done. And so for me, as I'm going through life, I have to have a plan. Like when I was unemployed, I set a date. I need to start a job by this date if I'm going to continue to provide for my family. And then I laid out, how do I get there? So you'll see that in this PowerPoint. I've developed an action plan for if there are things you want to achieve in your life, here's how you get there. And you don't have to do all 5 of these. You can do them in any order you want. But the big one you do absolutely have to do is practice self-care. You have to take care of you before you can take care of anyone else. And so these next several slides, I actually just have a whole bunch of different links that you can go to help define yourself, to define your self-care plan. Also, for anyone who's looking at that next phase in their lives of job, I was just there. So I know that this is happening a lot in a lot of industries as we're going through a really weird, wonky economic time. There are lots of different things that you can do. This Missouri Connections, I do want to plug this career goal and pathway, Missouri Connections. That's actually a free resource that's funded by the Missouri Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. It is very comprehensive, tons of resources out there. If you're kind of questioning, what do I want to do with my life? What do I like doing? Where do I want to go? It doesn't walk you, it's not as fancy as an app where it kind of walks you through everything you need to do. You do need to jump around a little bit, but it really has a lot of great information in there. All the links in here I've gone to, I've done all these different career assessments, played around with all of these things, which is why I put them in here, is I know they're all good resources in different ways. And so you can kind of figure out what works for me, what doesn't work for me, what am I interested in doing, and what's the best way to get there. And then also, again, I'm a big fan of free. For some reason, as human beings, if we can do self-help that's free, we're all in. If it starts to cost me money, then I'm like, no, I'll worry about that later. Again, that goes back to we don't take care of ourselves first. We don't put enough value on ourselves. And so I did make sure to add free stuff in here. Everything in here is a free resource because I know if it did cost money, I wouldn't do it either. So just want to be mindful of that. Now, this is the part where those 5 big things I want everyone to really take home from this. This is where those are, the free readings right here. And this right here are bolded. First one is change negative thinking. I remember when I was at work one day, I had a faculty person come to me and said, Mara, I know the perfect education program for you. You should consider going to school. I'm like, no, I'm not interested. Not my thing. I'm done. I'm like, no, Mara, you really should consider this. I'm like, no, I don't want to. And this conversation went on back and forth for several minutes. Says, Mara, you really need to consider this program. And I was like, yeah, no, not really. And he said something to me that really completely changed how I thought about it. He said, Mara, you're so smart. This program would be good for you. What I heard in my mind was a guilt trip of I'm not living my potential. But that's what motivated me to say, okay, maybe I should consider school. Not saying I heard that the right way, and I shouldn't have taken that the immediate negative, I'm not living my potential, but that is what I heard. And that's what motivated me to say, okay, maybe I should consider going to school. But that is the perfect reflection of our negative thinking. Like my negative thinking was first limiting me and saying, no, 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 I can't. That's not my path. That's not my path. Kyle dealt with other people doing the negative thinking that resonated with him until he got out of that. And it's overcoming that negative thinking that you're telling yourself in the back of your head that you wouldn't tell somebody else. That little voice that says, no, I'm not good enough. No, I shouldn't achieve this. No, I can't take time for me. I don't deserve it. You have to change that inner critic. And so that's huge. And then we don't take enough breaks. And so everyone, you need to take more breaks. You need to take that me time. You need to do things to replenish your cup. And emotional intelligence, we talked about how important that is, and being trustworthy and building your social capital. And it was really hard for me to narrow down on these 5 things. Like there are so many things out there that I'm like, oh, these are so critical and so important. And these are things that I found in my journey that I have used in my life and I still work on. But these are the 5 things that I think most resonate with being resilient and collaborative is work on you first and develop you first. And then you can model that for others and support them on their journeys to get there as well. So this whole thing, this whole hour and a half that we're together today, be there for you first. That's the number one thing. Take care of you first. And so my Maraism, the way I say that is advocate for yourself. I have told my kids this from a very early age that you have to advocate for yourself. And it's something I'm still working on with my son. He will get there someday, though. I will keep beating it into him until he does. But you really have to be your own best friend. You really have to be your own best ambassador. And you really have to stand up for yourself because everyone else needs to do it for themselves first as well. And so really giving yourself your voice and giving yourself permission to have your voice. That's really critically important. So I am really interested in hearing, like, those are my universal truths, Maraisms. I really want to hear other people's. Like, I really want to hear what is that life mantra you say to yourself to get through the hard times? What's the thing you find yourself repeating to others? What are those things that you guys really say or believe in or lean on when times are rough? And so I want to open it up. All right, everyone, stay tuned. So everyone stay connected with me on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect with me. If you want to meet later and just chat about life, let me know. I love setting up meetings and meeting new folks. I am the only Mara Woody with the name caps red. So you can find me pretty easily on LinkedIn. And I'd love to hear from all of you and stay connected with you. And then Kyle told me I had to pull this up, but I do want to know how I can have this presentation better in the future. This is the first run I've done of this presentation, and so I'm sure there are lots of opportunities to do better. So if right now you guys can scan in, ooh, there's something in the chat. Oh, Kyle, is this the form in the chat as well?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so yeah, it's either you can either click in the chat or you can scan this QR code. If this is on your phone, yeah, I guess it would be hard to scan the QR code if it's not on your phone or if it is on your phone, and give us some feedback about this presentation. I can do things to work on my presentation, and there are things Kyle definitely wants to be able to do as he keeps working and improving this series in the future. And so we'd love it if you'd give us some feedback. And so with that, we're just a couple minutes shy of starting. Kyle, did you have, I think you had some things you wanted to say too.
Yeah, first and foremost, I wanted to thank you so much for participating today and facilitating this very meaningful conversation. I thoroughly look forward to digesting your PowerPoint, clicking on those links, and really just kind of like pouring into myself. Because you're right, before we can improve the workplace, we have to start with ourselves. True transformation comes from within. And I also wanted to plug our next workshop, or the final one in the series on leadership development. And this is going to be a good one. We have an amazing facilitator, Clara McCalla, who will be, blessing us with some insightful wisdom. It's sure to be great. I dropped the link in the chat if you have not already registered. I look forward to seeing you all there. Again, please, click the link in the chat or scan this QR code. Your feedback is valuable, and all feedback is good feedback. So, don't pull your punches. Tell us how you feel, because that's how we develop. So, I thank you for coming today. I'm going to close it out by saying, go out there and be great, right? Because if not now, when? And if not you, who? So enjoy your Saturday. Enjoy this crisp fall day. It's a little dark and gloomy here in St. Louis, but let's still make it bright. All right. Everyone have a great one, and thank you for attending. We're out.